Welcome everybody to the Chess Lab. In this episode, I'm going through the course on the Accelerated Dragon on Chessable, and we're not going to study specific lines because that's not the goal of this video. The goal of this video is to go through the model games together and basically see what the Grandmaster author of this course, Mr. Benjamin Bock, is telling us to do in when it comes to middle game plans and in general plans ideas for both sides in the typical middle games and in general transitions from opening to middle game to end game that may happen from the opening we are playing, which is the Accelerated Dragon. So I would say that we can jump into it. It's a little bit late, so I'm not gonna talk too strongly, but hopefully that's fine. So as you can see, there are 10 model games. I've already watched the 2, but I'm gonna start from the first. Anyways, this is Mr. Benjamin Bock, as you can see. I'm gonna start with this Nepomniachtchi Caruana from the Seinfeld Cup. Again, I already saw it, but I don't remember it, so it's a good repetition for me. And I don't know if we are gonna be able to look at all 10, because that would be a little bit too much, perhaps. But let's start. Let me check if I've started the recording. Yes, okay. So hopefully you can see everything here. Let me make sure that everything is nicely and centered. And now let me check if you guys can see everything, because otherwise that video is to throw away. Yes, you can see everything here. Perfect. Okay, so let's go back. Alright, so let's start. So e4, c5, the Sicilian. And in the first moves, as you can see, there are no comments. This is simply because that's supposed to be the lines that we study. Now here Fabiano starts with, Fabiano is playing with the black pieces. He starts with the hyper-accelerated dragon, but it will transpose. Now we are in a normal accelerated dragon. Bishop c4, here the move is castle. Now d6, and after f3, bishop d7. Okay, but queen a5 is played in this game. So queen a5 is not, if I'm not mistaken, in the repertoire. Queen d3, knight e5. And let's see what Bock is saying here. As I mentioned in the knight c3 chapter, this is not the move I recommend. However, without this move, we would not have seen the masterpiece that is about to unfold. I recommend knight d7 followed by knight c5 with a fine game for black. The problem is I don't remember this line. I don't remember this line at all. So I'm gonna go in the knight c3 chapter and see the recommendation. I really don't remember this line. So there is bishop c4. Oh, alternative queen a5. Okay, so this is an alternative. I don't study the alternatives, but the queen a5 is indeed an alternative. Okay, fair enough. So let me close this and let's go back to the game. Alright, so basically after f3, the main move is bishop d7, but the alternative is queen a5. Okay, let's look at this. This is interesting because I may play it one day, why not? Queen d3, and now knight d5. Okay, the queen goes back to d2. And, you may say, but what's the point of watching this? It's an alternative, and they're not even following the main lines. Okay, but the point is not now to, memorize moves. Again, of course they're gonna go out. It's just to study middle games. The point is to see patterns, typical plans, typical ideas, typical things. Okay, so queen d2. The most logical retreating move, going for the typical queen bishop battery on the c1 h6 diagonals. Okay, by going back, the queen is first of all unpinning the knight, but also is setting up bishop h6. And he says that queen e2, which kind of plays against this knight, is also a worth try according to my stockfish. Okay, but queen d2 is chosen by Nepomniachtchi, and now bishop d7. So as you can see, eventually this bishop d7 moves. D7 move comes up. Black's best move by far, and a logical one, clearing up the c8 square for one of the rooks. And this sentence right there is already very important, because, you know, black in this type of positions, they always play bishop d7, and it's like, why? Well, here he says that one of the reasons, I'm sure it's a multi-purpose move, but one of the reasons is to clear the c8 square for one of the rooks. So now this enters our cognition. So as you can see, we are already learning massively here. Like the concept that bishop d7 is, among other things, made for one of the two rooks, this is huge. Okay, long castle. And now rook f to c8. A typical move in the dragon, bringing the rook into the game and preparing to create counterplay on the queen side with knight to c4. Okay, so now everything is all of a sudden coming together. The knight going to e5, with a tempo on the queen, by the way, is planning to redirect itself to c4. However, you can do it just like that, because the bishop will take it, and so there is this idea, bishop d7, rook c8, that looks at the c4 square. Also, in the Sicilians, there are typical ideas of sacrificing the exchange for the c3 knight, and also you are lining up with the king. Okay, king b1, this is typical opposite side castle move, and knight c4, this is a fork to the queen and the bishop. And here bishop takes c4 is played. So white loses the bishop pair, but white would have lost the bishop pair anyways. So white should keep their dark square bishop, and is therefore virtually forced to trade off our knight for their light square bishop. So this is very interesting, right? And you may say, why does white has to keep their dark square bishop? And why is the dark square bishop more important than their light square bishop? Quite frankly, I can't answer this question for you, but what I can tell you is that now we have an additional idea, which is to try to take their dark square bishop, because let's say that it happened in one of your games that you managed to play this knight c4 move for whatever reason, and you're forking their queen and bishop, but they don't take your knight. They play something like g4, for example. Well, you know, if they play g4, you will win their queen. So let's say that they play queen c1 or something. You know that one of your candidate moves that comes to mind immediately is knight takes c3, because you take the dark square bishop, because you remember Bok telling you that white should really not allow that. And so a plan for black is to take it. However, you don't play it automatically. Again, let's assume you're playing a game and you are in a similar position, they play queen c1. You don't just play knight takes c3, even though you know it's probably one of the best moves, if not the best move, but you calculate it. Like you play, okay, knight takes, queen takes, and what's my plan after that, right? And you think. And you may play it, you may not play it, right? But that's, if chess was that simple, you know, everyone would be a grandmaster. Of course it's difficult, even if you know the ideas. But at least it's better than not knowing them. Okay, so bishop takes c4, rook takes c4. So I will just take a second for just look at the position. Just look at it. Like, for example, there is always this blind spot that I have, which is knight to d5. You know? Does this force me to go queen to d8? I don't know. Maybe after knight to e5 there are some lines where you can actually allow knight takes e7. Because, for example, knight e5, yeah, there is no queen takes a2, so I'm drunk. But you know, knight d5, you play something, you threaten something, I don't know. And then knight takes e7, king f8 comes with a tempo on the knight. I'm just going out of craziness here, but you never know. So okay, now g4 was played by Nepomniachtchi. This was the first move of the game that Ian actually spent some time. 5 minutes and 45 seconds on. So perhaps he was no longer in his preparation. Knight b3 was better according to my stockfish, with the elegant point that queen a6, which is already an obscure move from my point of view, can be met by e5, forcing black to play the slightly awkward knight e8, which gives white the advantage after knight d5, which again hits this tender point. The point is that if you take, this runs into knight c5, and black loses material to the fork to the queen and the light square bishop. Okay. So we are learning all sort of patterns. I'll be honest, I'm not a big fan of variations when it comes to the game, so I'll rather watch this without the variations, but I am too autistic schizo to ignore them. So, yeah. Okay, g4. And now Caruana plays bishop e6. Interesting. If you have studied the classical dragon, you know that bishop e6 in many lines is the best move, and if you don't play it, black is seriously worst. This is of course different, but it's interesting. A logical move, as now both the light square bishop and the queen are eyeing the a2 pawn, this guy here, and if a white knight moves to d5, it can always be traded off, but this does seem to be a slight inaccuracy. Rook a to c8 was perhaps the better move, doubling the rooks on the c-file right away. It also looks very sensible. But okay, bishop e6 by Fabiano, and here knight to b3. Interesting move by Nepomniachtchi. Instead of just taking this bishop, he goes back. Now I'm gonna drink a little bit of water. He says, Ian picked up the pace again by spending only a minute on this move and the next one, so he's saying that he's playing very fast on the board. However, this seems to be a slight inaccuracy by white. White would have had a slight advantage after knight c to e2, which is a very obscure move. Knight c to e2, whoa. As the resulting endgame is a bit more pleasant for white. So basically he's saying that you're trying to trade queens. Interesting. But okay, and notice how knight b3 was the best move some moves ago, but now is not. Like here is best, but here is inaccurate. Chess is really complicated, and they are playing inaccuracy at like 2700 level, which is crazy. So this tells you how complex those middle game positions are. Queen a6, the best square for the queen, as black wants to keep their queen close to the enemy king. And this also helps you understand a little bit this line here. Knight b3 was better, counting that after queen a6 there is e5, right? Forcing knight e8 because of the tactics. So after knight b3 by Nepomniachtchi there is queen a6, and you may be wondering why queen a6? The best square for the queen, as black wants to keep their queen close to the enemy king. Basically, Bok is saying this is the most active square. So even in your games, you know that if knight b3, which seems to be a typical defensive maneuver by white, if your queen for whatever reason is on a5, even if you play the main line with bishop d7 in the very beginning, queen a6 is your candidate move. Again, let's say that you are in a position where in a Sicilian like that with the opposite side castling, you have a queen on a5 and they play knight b3. Do you immediately, without thinking, play queen a6? Absolutely not. But you consider it, and is one of your candidate moves. So studying this type of positions and games, it helps you spend much less time and being much more efficient in your thinking process. Because as soon as they play knight b3, boom, queen a6 comes to your mind instantly. And then you can calculate it. But, and this comes from experience, I used to take most of my time to come up with moves. Nowadays instead, which I'm a little bit more advanced, I spend most of my time calculating whether or not a move makes sense. It's actually quite rare that I have to spend really a lot of time to even come up with a move. it usually 2-3 moves immediately comes to my mind. Now it's time to check them, right? And sometimes, of course, it still takes me to come up with moves, but it's much more rare. So this is a work that you do. Okay, so queen a6, now bishop d4. And rook a to c8, here we go. So if we look at this position, Fabiano has almost all of his pieces in perfect spots. The two rooks are beautifully coordinated on the semi-open file. The queen is on a6, which again is safe for what we can see. Still looking at this king, and the two bishops. Look at black's two bishops, very important. The g7 bishop and the e6 bishop. They're both looking at this queen side, technically, but is where the king is. And if you look at this position, it seems like white can never be checkmated, because yes, black is pointing towards it with many pieces, but also white has a billion pieces in front of his king as well. And also this knight on f6 I don't like, because it's super restricted, but also it helps in controlling d5, so it's not the worst piece either. But let's see how it goes. White plays g5. Ian played this move after 6 seconds, but it allows black a beautiful tactical continuation that wins the game. And this is one of those situations where it's like, I would have liked to see like a better move for white. Even just a move. Like, tell me if h4 it makes sense, you know? But okay, knight takes e4 here. Wow. What a move. What a move. What a move. A lot of black's pieces were eyeing the white king, so the position was ripe for a tactic. Black wins in all of the lines. This game here, I don't know if you remember it, because most of the chess channels, they showed it from this side. I remember watching this game on Gotham Chess channel, on Agadmator's channel. Everyone showed this game because it's just crazy. I don't know if I've ever showed this game, perhaps on my own channel, I can't remember. But, you know, this was a very famous game. I remember it live in 2024 when it happened. But yeah, knight takes e4. I would say that Bok perhaps included this game to show you the tactical potential of black, of the dragon in general. But I'm gonna say something here. I personally don't enjoy too much these ridiculously crazy games, because yes, they're super cool, but like how insightful they can be, you know? If you watch a Karpov maneuvering game, it's boring as shit, but you learn chess. You know what I mean? Like a lot. But okay, it's a cool game, so let's enjoy it. And before going into the variations, let's try to understand what happened. So first of all, the knight is winning a pawn, a central pawn, and is hitting the queen. So it's not that white can take the bishop on g7, you know, bishop takes g7, there is knight takes with check, and then we take back the bishop, so we are winning the game. Also, you may be thinking what happened if they take the knight with the pawn, let's say. Well, in this case, I'm seeing something like bishop takes e4, they have to take knight takes e4, but then I'm looking at something like knight takes c3, or even knight takes d4, queen takes d4, rook takes c3, and in the end this pawn is tender, but I'm not sure. If knight takes, I'm seeing that rook takes kinda dismantles the house. But it's complicated, so let's see. F takes e4 was played by Nepomniachtchi, so let's see. Knight takes e4 leads to rook takes d4. Oh yeah, of course, much simpler. With the point that knight takes d4 runs into queen takes a2 check, with mate on the next move, okay? So let's try to look at this from the distance, like knight takes c4. I know this is not really the distance, but still. So if knight takes, there is rook takes, and on knight takes there is queen takes check, okay? Complicated. But okay, then there are no other moves. It's either you take with the pawn or with the knight. Okay, so they take with the pawn. And now bishop takes, okay. Knight takes, and here rook takes, okay. And here, if they take with the pawn, there is queen takes a2, king c1, queen a1 checkmate, so that's impossible. If they take with the queen, you probably first take on a2, and then take their queen. So they played a3. Now, of course, the question is what happens if they take the bishop, but I will say that there is rook takes c2 intermediate move. Obviously, the rook cannot be taken, as b takes c3 is met by queen takes a2, okay. An important point is that knight takes e6 runs into rook takes c2. Yeah, this is the key move, in my opinion, that you have to see, and it's not easy at all. And black wins a couple of pawns while the attack rages on. Yeah, but this is crazy. This position here, for example, like, is not easy to evaluate it. Like, after queen takes, rook takes, king takes, you have to play queen c4 check, perhaps, and if the king goes back to b1, you take on e4 first, and then you take the knight on e6, and you are left with a queen and many pawns for two rooks and less pawns, and he's technically winning, right? But he's crazy, and maybe the variations I've noticed are wrong. But okay, a3. Again, the goal here should be not to calculate, but like to learn how to play middle game in the Sicilian. So as you can see, it's difficult to even keep the focus while you study. So a3, and now queen c4 by Fabiano, threatening queen a2 check, which leads to checkmate. So if they play knight takes e6, what happens? I guess rook takes c2. So b3. Now queen c5, with the idea of attacking a3 perhaps and other things. Now what happens if knight takes e6? I guess you can just take back and the attack goes on. So rook c1 trying to defend, now queen takes a3. Black grabs another pawn and the white king is not feeling any safer. h4, rook up, threatening rook a5 with some checkmates to follow. Rook f2 c1, bishop takes g3, bishop takes b3. An elegant sacrifice to finish things off. If they take with a knight, what happens? I guess rook c2 and it's GG. Too many checkmates. And even if they take with the pawn, well, if they take with the pawn, I guess rook c2, knight takes c2, queen takes b3 check. But I don't know, I'm not sure. What happens if they take with the pawn? I really don't know. I really don't know. So, yeah. An elegant sacrifice to finish things off. A nice game by Fabiano, which perfectly showcased black's attacking potential on the queen side. What happens if they take with the pawn, though? I don't know. They take with the pawn, what do I do? Well, there is a line, which is rook a5, queen takes c3, queen a2, king c1, rook c5, but I don't know. Maybe. Okay, so this was the first game. Let's look at the second game, Magnus Carlsen against Hans Niemann. This is a very long game. I already looked at this game, but let's try to move quick through it. This is more insightful, perhaps, because it's a little bit more maneuvery. Okay, so bishop b5, here we have the Rossolimo. So g6, castle, bishop g7, rook e1. I don't remember what the move here is, even. Is it queen c7, or is it... what is the move here? Knight f6. The other main move here is e5. Both options are core in the course. Okay, so e5 was the move here. Can't really remember that. So knight f6, now e5. Knight d5. Knight f3, knight c7. Bishop takes c6, d takes c6. Okay, so this is some Rossolimo position. Knight e4 goes after the pawn. b6 defends the pawn. Knight f6 check. If we take with the pawn, e takes f6 check, attacks the king, king f8, f takes g7, king takes g7. They regain the material. So king f8, now the knight is under attack, so the knight goes back. So they lost a tempo, but we lost the right to castle. Now bishop to b4, pinning the knight, and threatening to win the pawn on e5 perhaps. All of this is covered in the course. This is definitely an alternative because I don't remember the moves. Magnus continues with the most popular move, which is d3. Okay. Not only white's most popular move, but also the best one. So knight d6. Black's best move, activating the knight again. Okay, so we are noticing some typical black maneuvers. The knight went, only look at the black knight. The knight went to f6, then to d5, then to c7, and then it got rerouted to e6. So you're noticing some lines. Note that capturing the pawn with bishop takes e5 would be a mistake, as white has the brilliant refutation with knight takes e5. And this is what I'm talking about when I say typical tactical patterns, right? Bishop takes d1, and here there is bishop h6. King g8, what happens if you go to e8? It's probably a combination of knight f6 and knight takes c6. But let's go. I'm tired, I'm not tactically inclined, but let's see. Knight takes c6, bishop takes c2. Okay. And knight takes c5, crazy move. Even though white is down a piece, the engine evaluates this position as winning since black's king and rook are so stuck in the corner. Okay. So, you know, there are some crazy engine lines, but knight d to g5. With this move, Magnus forces the trades of knights. Knight e to d2 is white's most popular move, so this is still theory at some GM level, and quite a testing one. The idea is to follow up with a quick h3, as white would like to recapture with a knight on f3. Okay. I recommend meeting this move with bishop h5. Our best move, as we want to make it difficult for white to actually get our light square bishop. Okay, h3 trying to play g4, but we go g5. Alright, creating an escape square for our bishop on g6. Black is fine here as they have the bishop pair, which also provides plenty of chances to fight to the win, for the win. Okay. But okay, Magnus played knight e to g5, knight takes, bishop takes, and now queen to d5. So Hans Niemann is centralizing the queen, as Hans Niemann is playing with the black pieces. The best move, activating the queen and aiming to ruin white's pawn structure with bishop takes f3. Okay. Rook e4, the only good way to keep the pawn structure intact. Something tells me that this is still theory for both of these two guys, but I'm not sure. Bishop f5, c4. This move gains some space and makes sure that black can never play c4, but it also weakens the d3 pawn. So okay, so I guess c4 is an idea in this type of game. Perhaps undoubling the c pawn and targeting d3. And if they ever play c4 themselves, I'm talking about white, well then d3 is a weakness. So okay, queen e6, now rook to e3. The rook is under attack, so they move it. And now h6, bishop f4, g5, gaining space on the king side and also pushing white's dark square bishop in a slight awkward spot. Bishop g3, and now rook d8. Okay, so there is some pressure over to d3, h3, king g8, trying to go to h7 perhaps to connect the rooks, but I don't know. a3, indeed king h7, b4. So it notices how after a3 they could have gone a5 trying to prevent b4, but they rather allow it. b4, and here they don't even undouble their pawns. They just play rook d7, doubling up the rooks to increase the pressure on white's d3 pawn. So this is very interesting play. B takes c5, b takes c5, okay. It's all about that d3 pawn, I guess. Queen b3, moving away from the d file, so rook d1 may follow to triply defend the d3 pawn, and also perhaps the queen is going to join an attack on the queen side. Rook h to d8, rook d1, and now queen g6. So as you can see, all of black pieces are beautifully attacking the d3 pawn. I really like the way that black is playing here. Knight e1, too passive, and now h5, look at that. This type of play actually reminds me of some attacks in Freycinet's course on the Sveshnikov Sicilian. It usually starts with f5, but okay. Gaining more space on the king side, aiming to break open that side of the board with a subsequent h4 and g4. I'm really tired, guys, and I just want to say something. I hate to do this type of study. I really hate it. Okay? But it's important to do it. So, you know, I love chess, I love studying it, I love playing it, but there are certain aspects of studying chess that I don't like. Like, studying these games is really boring to me. And my brain can't help but thinking that it's not that useful. I know it's useful, but I don't really believe it. Even though I know it consciously, subconsciously, I'm like, this is bullshit. But I know it's useful, and despite I don't enjoy doing it, I still do it. So, you know, sometimes, guys, you have to make some sacrifices even in the things that you like. But okay, knight f3. Is the pawn hanging now? I guess he's not. I guess that if you play bishop takes, there is knight takes, and after you take with the queen is no longer guarding d3, and so they can take back the bishop. And so you will trade the d3 pawn for the g5 pawn. And it's probably equal, but maybe white is better, I don't know. But definitely black is not pressuring anymore. So h4, bishop h2, now e6. Okay. Alright. Queen c3. Bishop f8. Knight e1. And now g4. Perhaps the idea behind bishop f8 is, well, you are overprotecting c5, that now is defended once and attacked 0, but perhaps you want to go bishop e7, so now you're finally setting up bishop takes or even rook takes, and after knight takes you take with the bishop, and this square is protected. So Magnus is like, okay, I'm just going to go back with the knight. And okay, now bishop e7 doesn't make much sense, because you are not really defending g5 from the knight, because the knight is no longer there. However, you can't take on d3 now, because knight e1 protects it enough. So now you go g4. Breaking the kingside open. White's position is sooner or later going to fall apart. Now I think that the immediate threat is g takes h3, because the pawn's pinned, and if you take with the rook, I take with the bishop, and the pawn's still pinned. So h takes g4 by white himself, bishop takes g4, perhaps making it a little bit more difficult for white to play knight f3. I don't know, because it would be pinned to the rook. Maybe after knight f3 there is bishop e7, defending the pawn on h4 and just chilling, perhaps threatening h3, or perhaps h3 immediately, or a combination of the two, I don't know. But anyways, f3, they were probably tactics. Bishop back to f3, and now, again, perhaps threatening h3, perhaps not, pressuring d3, all the white pieces are tied down. f4, but now a new target has been created, which is the pawn on f4, so bishop h6. Queen to a5. So Magnus is trying to find counterplay over to the queen side, attacking c5 and a7. But, this costs some allocation of forces to the wrong side of the board, perhaps. So now queen g4, which is with tempo because it attacks the rook. Rook f3, which, interposes, so you can't just jump the rook, but now there is a tactic, which is bishop e4. Black simply wins material now, and Hans did not have any trouble converting his advantage into a win. The point is that if you move the rook, which is under attack, you lose this one, and if you take this bishop with a pawn, you lose the rook, and then the attack rages on. So queen takes c5 was attempted, bishop takes, knight takes, h3, and beautifully played by Black. I really enjoyed this. Everything collapses now. Everything collapses. Everything just collapses here. And white resign. Very nice game. I really liked it. And finally, we reached a game that I've never studied before, which is this game here, played at the FIDE World Rapid Team Championship, okay? And these I've never seen, so I'm gonna see this for the first time with you guys. And let's see. Here we go. So e4, c5, knight to f3, knight to c6, d4. So this is some standard accelerated dragon. Bishop c4. At the highest level, bishop c4 is definitely the main move. And here bishop d7. Okay, so finally we reach a position that this may actually be played against me, and this is full repertoire. Queen d2, knight takes, bishop takes, and here b5 is the main move. Okay, so this is where the repertoire ends. And so for the first time, this is a game that is even more useful because it's really concrete line that I've been studying. All of this is still theory and is still covered in the course. The idea is to follow up with a quick a5 to put white's light square bishop in an awkward spot. And already, guys, a comment like this, the idea is to follow up with a5 to put this light square bishop in an awkward spot, is something that wasn't talked about in the course. And you may argue this is obvious, but if there's something I've learned in 8 years of studying and playing chess, is that there's nothing obvious in the game. Nothing. So it's good to know. Because, for example, a5, you may think, oh, it's just to attack the white's king, right? Which in general is true, but practically what are you doing? Because if you say attack the white's king, a principle of pawns against pieces is that you gain tempi against them, so you may want to play b4 in some lines, who knows? But no, it's to put this bishop in an awkward spot. Okay, long castle. This is still fine, and I always wonder, when I was studying this variation, wow, what happened if they long castle? Can I just go a5, a4 and win the game? We'll see. Long castle, this is still fine, but white really has to know how to deal with the pawn pushes that are coming on the queen side. So you go a5, logical. And here again, if I'm looking at this position, I prefer black, but I'm looking at white next move and is a4. So in a position like this, I would expect something like a3, right? But a4 is something that, if I'm looking at this position and I'm trying not to watch, I'm putting my hand, I'm trying not to watch the moves, right? And I haven't seen the move. I'm like what? Look at this position without looking at the moves, which is very difficult to do because your mind just goes there, but your eyes just go there. But how do you react? How do you react? Do you push? Do you take? You do nothing? My personal instinct is to take, because you're opening up the B file and you're opening up lines. The second move I would do is rook b8. b4 I don't like, because you're closing things up. I will take. Now let's see. B takes a4 is indeed correct. It's so obvious for Bok that he doesn't even comment it. Okay, fair enough. So you're opening up lines. And now bishop a2. And this little symbol here, minus plus, means that he's already winning for black, which is crazy. After this move, white is just lost. This is crazy. Black is now simply up a pawn and gets a crushing attack on the queen side. Knight takes a4 was absolutely necessary. I would still pick black, but white's position is playable. And from here is a game. But this shows you how downhill things can go. Okay, rook b8. And you may say, okay, come on, bishop a2 is a horrible move, But still, rook b8, right? How do you continue the attack? Bok is showing it to us. I would have played a3, but perhaps this is not the most precise. Let's see. So rook b8. e5. e5 is a typical move. See, this is how things comes together. In the Nepomniachtchi game, Nepomniachtchi Caruana, we saw some variations, not lines in the game, but variations that could have occurred, that didn't occur, but they could have, where e5 was a critical defensive resource for white. So you know that when you're calculating, of course you don't have only candidate moves for you, you also have for your opponent, you have to consider e5. And don't be scared of it. Here we are seeing many examples where black wins, even if white plays e5, but you have to consider it and do something about it. So after e5, d takes e5. So now, if they play d5, if they play e5, and even if they don't, you are calculating, right? You know that the candidate move for them is e5, your candidate move for you is d takes e5. And maybe these are not the best moves, but at least you calculate them and they're out of the way. And you become much faster and stronger because the quality of your thinking process when it comes to speed and moves increases. This is huge. Like, can't you feel the improvement inside your veins? Because I'm feeling it. So d takes c5, bishop takes c5. Notice the tactical concept that after this skirmish, the rook on b8 is hit. And look at this, queen b6. And if you have studied the classical dragon, there are actual lines where black ignores the attack on the b8 rook and just goes with the queen up. And notice how even there is another tactical pattern, which is if bishop takes f6, there is queen b2 checkmate, obviously. But bishop takes f6, if you took back with the bishop, then this bishop hangs. Again, here you have checkmate on b2, but you must notice these things. Because again, in a future game, the position may not be exactly like this, so you have to calculate all the variables. Like, let's say that the rook was here on f1 for some reasons. They play bishop takes f6, you play bishop back to f6, they play queen takes d7, then you check them, they go to d1 or to d2, and then you take the knight, regaining the material and probably winning the game. Perhaps rook d8 skewering, right? So all these things that they have to come to your mind. White simply does not have a good way to defend the b2 pawn. Okay, so they play b3. Now, of course, we are wondering what happens if bishop takes. Well, if bishop takes, rook takes, and they still have the same problem. So b3, a takes b3, hitting the bishop, c takes b3. If they take the rook on b8, I guess we can just play b takes a2 first, with the idea of promoting, and after knight takes only then rook takes b8, and things are looking quite nasty. So c takes b3, a4. Notice how they never care about the b8 rook. Blasting things open even further on the queen side. White's king will not be for long. I'm very curious what happens if bishop takes b8, but probably just rook takes b8, quite frankly, is enough. So b takes a4, and now knight to e4. Notice how this is the second time that knight e4 is just crashing. Caruana played the knight takes e4 because there was a pawn there previously, but look at this, unbelievable. And there are some lines in the classical dragon that I've studied. I've made a study in the past in the Classical Dragon for a friend of mine that plays it. The conclusion was that it's not good, but that's so funny. But there was a line that actually ended with something like either knight takes e4 or knight d5, or knight e4 or knight d5. And what's going on here? Well, the queen is under attack, and if you take this knight, the bishop drops. And if the queen takes the bishop, the knight drops with probably checkmate. No, there's actually checkmate immediately. So knight d5 now, countering the counters. If f takes e4, bishop takes, yep. So knight d5, and now the position is just crazy. Queen c5 check. Black begins to wave a mating net. Queen c2, queen a3, queen b2, rook c8 check, bishop back to c3, queen takes. Yeah, this is actually checkmate because the bishop's pinned and the queen's defended by the rook. The c3 bishop is pinned and the game is over. Okay. So now I'm gonna click on this. I'm gonna go this, continue, because this was studied. Here we go. This is the way I do it. You can also just click on view directly, but I like to do it like that because I just prefer it this way. Okay, another game. Let's see how this goes. Okay, so by transposition we are still in the dragon. The bishop c4 line. And here we go. Now they play h4, so we have yet another move. And let me drink some water. Let's allow everything to sink in. Allow everything to sink in. One good thing about following diet, as strong as the bulking diet, is that you are not angry. Angry. Right now I'm not angry. I'm not even angry, but I wanted to say angry. I'm not angry because like you eat 3,300 calories a day, you're chill. But okay, h4, let's focus on the game. In the previous game we saw long castle, long castle, a5, a4, b takes a4, bishop a2, rook b8, and crazy things happen. But h4, okay. Kovalev goes for the most aggressive approach against this line, but Black's play comes faster. Okay, so a5. Striking, sticking to the plan as a4 is coming next. He's not threatening to trap the bishop though, because after a4 there's still bishop d5, attacking the rook. I just want to make sure that we are on par with that. But they go with h5. And even here, guys, this is very important. You're looking at this game and you're like, oh, I have to remember this move precisely. No. What you have to notice here is the way that the Grandmaster, we're talking about Alexei Shirov. I didn't even read the name. Holy shit, we're talking about Shirov. Holy Shirov. Holy smokes. Shirov, okay? Our goal is to see how Shirov reacts to the h5 push. And the way he reacts is a candidate move that you have, meaning the next time that you are in a similar position and they play h5, you have as a candidate move, as a reaction, what the Grandmaster did. And you don't have to remember that Shirov played this against Kovalev in Riga 2014. This is what the Super Grandmasters do. They remember exactly everything. You don't need that. You just know that after h5 you can go with the push on the other side. If you notice, they are pushing h5 and you're pushing a4. It's very mirror-like, so for your brain it's easy to remember. And again, if they play h5 against you and you have this duo, don't just play a4 automatically, calculate. This is what I've been telling you forever in this video. So a4, And now bishop to d4. How do you react to bishop to d4 in similar positions? Well, the way Shirov reacted is b4. Now, is b4 always correct? Absolutely not. Again, you calculate, but b4 is in your radar now. An important move, as white should not be allowed to get a3 in, as that will stop b4. This is huge, monumental. Guys, this is huge, monumental. Notice how in other lines the pawn was still on a5, so knight a4 was a move because the bishop was on b3. Here knight takes a5, just loses the knight because you take with a rook, probably, right? So that's huge. And now h takes g6. And this is not monumental. This is beyond monumental. How do you react to h takes g6? H takes g6. Shirov probably didn't even calculate. He probably did, but let's say he didn't. Like, you don't take the knight with an attack on the queen, because then perhaps g takes f7 check is annoying, or something, right? You just go h takes as a candidate move. You ignore everything else. Okay. The simplest way to reach a good position for black. Knight e2 saves the knight. e5 attacks the bishop. And notice how this closes the diagonal. Again, it's important you notice this, because when you are in a real game, let's say you find yourself in a similar position, you want to play e5, but you're like, oh, I'm shutting down my bishop so badly, this has to be wrong. But no, e5 is a move that a super grandmaster did. Okay, again, you don't have to remember that Shirov played it on move 16 in the Kovalev-Shirov Railway Open 2014, but your mind knows that is a possibility. This is very important. So, okay, bishop e3, logical, and now you know why they play bishop e3 is because they still want to go bishop h6, right? To have that c1 h6 combo. Now, bishop takes a8, finally analyzing this move, we'll run into e takes d4, the bishop's hanging, so the bishop goes back. Knight takes d5, which not only takes the bishop out of the game, but also defends the d4 pawn, once at least. And now rook e8, meaning this pawn is actually kept on the board, with a crashing initiative for black. Okay, you're probably wondering what happened if they take here. That's a very good question. My answer would be queen e7, the queen goes back, bishop d5, and the knight's lost. So, okay. Very nice tactical patterns. So bishop e3, and now knight takes d5. Okay. Now is the time to get rid of the bishop, as black would not like their a8 rook to be hanging for too long. Fair enough. Now e takes d5. Why not queen takes d5? Because I guess then bishop e6 is annoying. With combinations of b3 or something. But okay, e takes d5. And now rook e8. Other moves are good as well, but I like Shirov's choice, as now bishop h6 will not force the trade of bishops. And now bishop h6 was played anyways. This move was just been anticipated and black already gets a decisive advantage. Bishop g5 was the only move to keep a balanced game. Fair enough. So bishop f6. This is another pattern, of course. The point behind black's last move. With the dark square bishop on the board, black's king is safe. e4 is coming quickly, and black is actually already winning. Knight g3, stopping e4, or not. So there is the pattern of playing e4 anyways. Now, however they take, there is b2 hanging with an attack on the rook, and then c3 skewering the queen. And if they take with the knight's pinned. Very important detail. Castle. Now the pawn's actually hanging, I think. But now a3. Knight takes e4, which also hits the d6 pawn. But rook takes e4, look at that. When Shirov is playing, fireworks are about to happen at some point. Bound to happen at some point. Black gets beautiful compensation for the exchange here. F takes. A takes b2. A takes b2. What a pattern as well. With the idea that perhaps then you take on a2. So you're opening up the file for the a rook. Is this what you're doing? I don't know. But not taking with the bishop, taking with the pawn. This is huge, monumental. Now bishop c3 defends everything. Queen f4, threatening f7. So queen e8. Notice how the bishop on c3 is also keeping the dark squares. Bishop g5. Bishop to b5, attacking the rook moves. And now rook takes a2 indeed. So, you know, there are this is a pattern that can happen. Like this concept here, you are attacking this pawn with the bishop and with the pawn, but you take with the pawn, so you're about to take a2 as well, and then go to a1 perhaps, and if they take, you promote. This is a pattern that you can use it with white pieces in a completely different opening. This is beyond the scope of this opening specifically. These are just tactical patterns that you're noticing. Because if you're a beginner, like if you're me, you will play bishop takes b2 all day. All day. But Shirov's like, a takes b2 is actually quite smart, if you think about it. And it's just so, it makes so much sense. It creates a super strong best pawn. Notice how bishop takes b2 doesn't make best pawns. And it's just so strong. But I would have never played it. Black is winning as rook a1 is coming next. Kovalev tries to complicate matters now, but it just does not work. Rook takes c3, okay. And of course, you know, it's not so simple. Like you have to think about what happened if rook a3 followed by bishop f6, and if you take queen f6. Like it's complicated, you know. Things are complicated. But Shirov, I'm sure, calculated everything, and he's just in time to stop everything. But okay, rook takes b takes. Bishop f6, again threatening queen h6 perhaps. But now rook a1. Queen h4, threatening mate on h8. Check. King h2. Queen f5, check, look at that. Bishop takes e5. Pawn takes d5. Queen d8, check. Queen here, and here the point is that if you do something, then there is perpetuals. But rook f1, not only threatening b1 queen, but also guarding f6. And queen b1 is coming next. b1 queen, I will say. So Kovalev resigned. A beautiful game by Shirov as he navigated the complications from the black side. A very insightful game. So let's mark that I studied this, so I know in the future that I actually studied this thing. And let's go with another game. I don't know if I'm gonna do all 10, but studying these games is better to study them in a full session, if that makes sense, because you see the pattern and you remember them. Okay, so let's keep some focus. e4, c5. This was played between Durar Bailey, yeah, and Zvyagintsev in the FIDE Grand Swiss 2021. I butchered their names. Yeah, I'm the name butcher. That's who I am. So knight f3, knight c6, d4, takes, c4. Okay, so this is what's the name of this thing? In a previous video I told you that I can't ever remember the name of this, but it's written here, the Maroczy-Bine. Yeah, Maroczy-Bine is something that just doesn't come to my mind. Knight f6, this is actually the course. Knight c3, d6, bishop to e2. Here the move is knight takes followed by bishop g7. Let's see. Indeed. Bishop e3, here castle is the move. And here queen to d2. On queen d2, what was the move? I think the move is a5. Yeah, a5. And here I played this in a game And did they play... What did they play? Maybe they played f3 specifically, yes. And I played a4, I remember, but I got crushed. I remember that I got crushed in this game. Rook c1. And now let's see how black plays this game. Queen a5, which I also did in the game. g4, this is definitely something that they didn't do in the game, but okay. And now bishop e6. Okay, interesting. Knight b5. Rook f to c8, so he's not afraid to trade queens, interesting. Just targeting c4. Queen takes a5, rook takes a5. We get a typical endgame in the Maroczy bind too. It is instructive to see how an experienced grandmaster like Zvyagintsev plays this one. This is huge. I'm getting excited because this is what I love about chess, is seeing the way that grandmasters deal with complex positions that I may get on the board myself. This is so great. I'm so happy that I'm watching this. It's crazy. It's like a movie. Let's go. Notice tactically you are not really threatening rook takes, because after pawn takes and rook takes, the rook is defended. So I can't draw arrows on this board. That's why I'm not doing it. I would love to draw arrows, but I can't. King d2, overprotecting the rook on c1 and activating their pieces, I guess. These are just my comments. They mean nothing. And okay, you look at a position like this, and it's funny because if you're somebody that is rated like 2000 FIDE or less, like me, and most of you watching, I guess, if not all of you, you know, it's like, I don't know how to express this, but it's like the game is over. Meaning, you couldn't win by a trick, and now you're just desperate. Like, you have no idea what to do. And you're so overwhelmed. At least me. Like, here I'm overwhelmed. Like, there are so many things going on. It's like, there is a random king on d2. Can I attack it? Can I win? There's a king on d2. Can I win? I still have two rooks. There are the two bishops and a piece, the knight. And then there is this g4, f3, e4 formation. And a pawn on c4. And the knight on b5. My pawn is on b7. The other one's on a4. A 3 against 2. And there is a central pawn majority for me. And there's a pawn on h2. Is he going to play h4, h5? Do I have to worry about it? Do I have to play h5 after h4? Yes, no. Is f4 a thing, but this is undefended? Maybe h3, f4? Oh my goodness. Oh, but then e4 falls. Oh, what is going on? It's like, what? You know? And so and what I want to believe, maybe it's not true, maybe it's just me coping, or me being delusional. But like, I want to believe that every master and every grandmaster felt this and feel this when facing something new. And I want to believe that every master and grandmaster builds his strength on top of what was discovered before them, which is the concept of living on the shoulders of giants, right? So I want to believe that every strong chess player that ever was is just a student of the game. And this means that me and you, we both have the opportunity to one day become strong, really genuinely strong chess players, because we are just strong players to become, in potency, if that makes sense. In potenza, like philosophically speaking, I don't know how to say it in English. Potentially, but like philosophical term. I don't know, I want to believe this. I think is in everyone's best interest to believe this. So let's keep going. So knight d7. Knight d7. So here I'm trying to rationalize it. The knight on f6 is doing nothing. If you look, he has no future. This pawn triangle is super strong against this knight. The knight is dead. So you play knight d7, which if you have studied the theory from this course, you know there is a line where knight d7, knight c5 is a thing. knight d4, going back, hitting the bishop. Yes, because by playing knight d7, the bishop cannot drop back to d7, so all of a sudden knight d4 threatens to win the bishop pair, and it's quite forced. And here knight e5. So see, my bias was knight d7, knight c5, but of course after knight d7, there is no rule or law that states that the knight should go on c5. I live in Italy, I've never heard of that rule, but you never know. So knight d7, knight here, now knight to e5. Moreover, since the bishop's hit, you may be thinking as a beginner, and I consider myself a beginner just to be clear here, because yes, I may have a rating which is 1970. They adjourned the rating, by the way. I am 1970 FIDE now, but it's like when it comes to middle game maneuvers in the Maroczy bind, I know nothing. I know like a 1400. So I'm absolutely a beginner when it comes to certain things. I'm a little bit more advanced when it comes to other things, but here I'm genuinely a beginner. It's not an exaggeration. So knight e5, and knight e5 is very interesting. He's allowing knight takes e6, but he's targeting the c4 pawn. So this is now with tempo, because we are threatening knight takes c4 with check as well. So this is an actual threat. Forcing white to trade on e6, as otherwise white would just lose the c4 pawn. Okay, so black is like he wants white to trade on e6, because he could have avoided it. Well, he couldn't have avoided it after knight d7, but first of all he could have not played knight d7, but after knight d7 he could have played knight c5 to make knight takes e6 less traumatic by taking back with the knight. But no, he's okay with this transformation. Black has double e-pawns, but has excellent piece play to compensate for it. So basically we have an experienced grandmaster, this Vadim guy, Zvyagintsev, and he's playing like this, and Grandmaster Benjamin Bok, which is a very strong grandmaster, is agreeing with him. So you have two very strong grandmasters agreeing that this is okay, if not even more, in a positive way, for black. Like, my mind is blown away. What is going on? And guys, be humble. Don't you dare say, oh, I mean, of course, nah. Don't pretend to understand this. Not even for a second. This is crazy. I'm understanding nothing here. This is unbelievable. But okay, we have great piece play, but let's see what it means. h4. Okay. And on the other side, you have another guy, which I don't know if he's a grandmaster or what, but he's in the FIDE Grand Swiss. I would assume he's very strong. Durar Bailey. He's like, okay, you do whatever piece play. I'm just going to go h4. Let's see. Knight c6, look at this. This is some grandmaster shit, dude. This is crazy. Because if you look at it in a flow, it's like, look at the knight, look at the black knight. Knight e7, knight e5, knight c6. The knight is just d. But okay, what is knight c6 doing? Knight c6 is attacking b2. So he's improving the bishop. This is like the principle of harmony. And he's perhaps looking at the d4 square, from which the knight looks quite impressive. And he's perhaps looking at b4, and he's perhaps looking at playing a3. Again, piece play. The rook's also more open now. Not that it means anything, but I'm just noticing it. Perhaps now d5 is possible. I don't know. Well, d5 was possible even previously, so I don't know what I'm talking about. But before, it will force a trade of rooks. Now it prevents that. So rook b1, which defends the pawn, and here a3. Creating further weaknesses for white on the queen side. Bro, I am so happy I'm watching this. What is this? It happens sometimes. Let's say you're playing Areti and you have a bishop here, and they play rook b1 to defend, and you have a pawn on a5. Then a6 is basically what a3 is here. But what weakness? b4. Whoa, b4, whoa. b3 will run into knight b4 and the a2 pawn is simply falling. Okay, so this is very nice. So b4, and now rook a4. Rook a4 threatening the pawn. Now white's b and c pawns are very weak, and one of them is simply going to drop. It's crazy because now that I'm looking at these lines, it's obvious that the white position is about to crumble. But here, in this position here, everything seems so chill. Like, you will never say that in a couple of moves the whole white queenside is about to fall. And knight c6 is a move that for some reasons my beginner brain would have never played. I don't know why. That's crazy though. b5, knight a5, and now look at that, all of a sudden c4 is under tremendous pressure, like tremendous. c5, d takes, wins a pawn, tries to take it back, defends it. But okay, you know, black is left with these isolated pawns. So this is really instructive because you look at a position like this, right, and you count the pawns. Technically black is up a pawn, this is a little bit weak, but in reality this position is super difficult. Like, I imagine myself playing this on a 15 plus 10 and I have like 2 minutes and white is rated like 2250. Like, what do I do here? Like, so crazy. Bishop d1 hits the rook. Rook c4, trying to get a trade in. The king moves. King f7, does the same. Bishop b3. Rook goes here. White is not only down a pawn, their queenside is also collapsing even further. Black's technique was not always perfect, but the result was never really in doubt. Okay, so bishop c2, here the game is very long, it probably deserves hours of analysis, but let's just go. Rook b2, again I would have played bishop to b2 in a heartbeat, but again rook b2 makes more sense because you are attacking this pawn, you are attacking the bishop, and if they take with the rook, see, now I don't immediately play bishop takes b2. This is what I would have done if I didn't see the previous game. Now I know that after rook takes, I also consider as a candidate move a takes b2. I'm improving at the game. And hopefully, if you have been following, you are improving as well. Hopefully, guys, here you consider rook takes b2, a takes b2, based on what we previously saw. And if you didn't, if you only consider rook takes bishop takes, okay, now you see one more time. f4, so white is going all out. Bishop to c3. Don't worry about this bishop moving because the rook pins it. Rook takes, and look at that. A takes, indeed. Now the rook's hanging, so rook b1. And now what to do? Rook to d8. I wonder what would have happened if knight c4 with the idea of going to a3, but probably after knight c4 there is king to d3, and after knight a3, king takes, knight takes with check, bishop takes, and you have two bishops against the rook, so that's not working. So rook d8 prevents the king from approaching, and knight to c4 is all of a sudden a massive threat. So bishop d3 prevents that. And now e5. Now e5. Trying to get rid of the weakness of the double pawns, I guess, and also like opening the road for the king, but I'm not sure. f5, bishop to d4. Okay, so that was an idea. Doesn't this drop the pawn on b2 though? That's beyond my understanding. But I guess if they take, you want to take back with the e-pawn, and after they take here c4 and you have two connected passed pawns, that's probably crashing. Which is also like monumental, like this understanding of grandmasters is crazy. Like the grandmaster is ready to play bishop takes, and he's gonna lose this pawn, but he's gonna have another two super strong passed pawns. Like this is unbelievable. This is something that you can easily miss when you're analyzing this. Bishop takes d4, e takes d4 indeed, e5 check, king g7, rook takes, rook d5 first, bishop here, rook takes, king defends, knight c4. This is crazy, of course. If they take the knight, you take the bishop, and the endgame is winning. You're also threatening something like knight d6, perhaps, I don't know. This happens, check, takes. And this is, of course, endgame knowledge, because I would have no idea that this is winning for black. And if you say, this is obviously winning, fair enough, yeah, this time is fair, but I don't know endgame, so... Rook e2, king f7, defending the pawn, rook check, king here, rook here. Yeah, just rook takes, rook h5, king here, takes, check, goes behind the pawn, keeps it, c4, cuts the king off, improves his king, moves away from rook c8, that would be annoying, and just pushes the pawn, defends it. If the king takes, it's over, and white resigned. If you take, you promote. If you play rook e8, queen check, and he's mating a few moves. Beautiful game. But also notice something, these are long games. So it's not, if you play these things, it's gonna be grind. So there are still many games to go. Perhaps this is the last one, but I'm really enjoying this. Is that I don't want the video to be too long, because then my software takes like 5 years to render and stuff. And the video's never gonna get out. e4, c5, c3, knight f6. So this is an Alapin. Snap back to reality, bro. This is an Alapin. So we have Kopke playing against Bok, which is the author of the course. So finally Bok is showing some of his own games. Knight f6, knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4. Now d5 is the move, if I'm not mistaken. Yes. Okay, now a6. Yes. Castle, and here what's the move? Bishop f5. Yes. And now d4. Okay. Here I think we are out already of theory, or maybe not. I think here we are out of theory, maybe. Okay, let's see. So queen f3 by Kopke. Queen c6, trying to trade queens. Okay, this again, guys, this is monumental. Like in this position here, I see that the b pawn is under attack, and I'm like, queen c6 is the first move that comes to mind, but then I'm like, oh, they take with a queen, I take back, my pawns are weak, they move their dark square bishop, they're gonna target them on the c-file. What's going on? And he's like, Bok goes for it. So a grandmaster is choosing to trade queen in this situation. Queen takes, b takes, and black is slightly better. This is the symbol, but let's see the comment. This endgame is already a bit better for black. For my beginner mind, this is... what? The plan here is to follow up with king d7 and bishop d6, followed by an eventual rook h to b8, so this rook here to here, so he's saying king d7, my mouse is dying for some reason, and he can't die, he's just connected with a cable, but okay. So king d7, bishop d6, and then rook h to b8, or actually, and a5, a4 to exert pressure on the queen side. I'll just keep saying monumental because it is. So bishop e3, bishop d6. Now, if they play d5 attacking the knight, you can always play knight takes d5, saving the knight and winning the pawn. Rook f to c1 hits the pawn, king d7 defends it. This reminds me of what? This reminds me of some lines, believe it or not, in the Philidor. Yeah, believe it or not, there are some lines that I've studied in the Philidor. It reminds me of that. And even some lines in the Queen's Gambit accepted endgames. Dude, bishop d6, king d7 is a typical formation there. But I would have never connected with this position. Like here I'm lost. I'm like queen c6, queen takes, pawn takes, and like bishop d6, king d7. Now it's so obvious, but if you never see it, it's like, what? So obvious. Bishop back to d2. Notice how they played here, then here. What's going on? Perhaps they want to go bishop a5 to prevent a5 itself. That's why they played a5 first, because if you play rook h to b8, then maybe bishop a5 and you can't push the pawn, which is the typical idea. So a5 was played. Very interesting. But notice how both players kind of know these plans, right? Bishop d1, so that a4 doesn't come with tempo. And now bishop to e4. Stopping bishop f3 and aiming for the d5 square possibly. This is very nice. So bishop to d1 was a multi-purpose move. Not only a4 doesn't come with tempo, but also bishop to f3 is threatened. So bishop e4, not only preventing bishop f3, but also he wants to go to d5, continue with this idea of exert pressure. This is huge. Monumental, sorry. Knight back to b1 with the idea of rerouting to c3, I guess. Rook h to b8, finally. Bishop to e2. a4. Knight there. Bishop back to g6, so they don't go to d5. They want to keep the bishop pair on the board. Okay. So keeping the bishop pair on the board is more important than getting the d5 square. Okay. Knight d1 back. Knight d5, because you can always go back with you can always go there with the knight. Okay. Rook to c4. The knight from d1 is also defending the pawn, I just noticed. Rook b6, doubling up but defending the c6 pawn. And rook b6, funnily enough, is the main move of a line in the Philidor. There is a Course of Financial Master column, if I'm not mistaken. Rook a to c1, and here knight to f4. Hitting the bishop, bishop f3, hitting the pawn. Rook to a6, okay, defending laterally like that, interesting. Bishop takes f4, so black gets the bishop pair. The rook goes to c3. And now what to do though? Bishop to d2. Whoa, is this rook trapped? Rook a3, bishop b4. Wow, the rook's trapped. That's insane. Oh no, it's not. The rook can go to e3. Okay, I thought it was trapped. Bishop to b1. What's going on? Bishop to e2. The point is that a3 runs into bishop d2 and now he's actually trapped, I guess. And black wins material as one of the rooks is getting trapped. Also the other one. If the rook goes to e5, there is bishop to d3, okay. Because the rook would want to go to a3, but now it can't. This is crazy. This is crazy. So bishop to b1, bishop here. The rook moves. Now a3. Now bishop back. What about bishop to d2 now? Sorry. Oh, there is not the d3 square. Okay. Now the rook goes back, bishop g6. Okay. So white managed to not lose the rooks, but now there is the threat of bishop g5, I guess. So g3, if bishop g5, there is f4. Bishop g5, f4, here we go. Bishop back to f6, okay. So black has the bishop pair. There is a weakness on b2. You can't really move it because you just take en passant. But yeah, the game continues here. Rook c4, targeting a4. Bishop back to b1 again, perhaps bishop a2, bishop b3 or something. The knight goes to c3, attacking a4 and also preventing bishop a2. Now bishop to c2. Knight goes to e4. The bishop takes it. Oh yeah, because now the knight by moving here is not defending b2 anymore, and if knight d2 d1 now, you just take it. So yeah, that's it. Black is up a pawn now and he's just winning. It took me a long time to actually win the game from here, but I always kept up winning advantage. Okay, so king f2, Rook a2, rook e3, bishop e7. Again, this endgame deserves hours of analysis, but I have to go because, like, I can just stay here forever. g5. This is some endgame understanding I only dream of. This is just crazy. He goes, wins another pawn. Loses a pawn back somehow. And now he has a central majority here. And he just makes it roll. He just makes it roll. Whoa, okay. And now he has a 2-pawn advantage. That's pretty much it. Consolidates, and now he's just winning. Not the easiest, but okay. Complex game. We learned some patterns. We saw some things. Very nice. Okay. Let's go next game. This is played between Gawain Jones and Vishwanathan Anand in Vacancy 2018. So, you know, this is just a random game between two unknowns. Like, who is Gawain Jones and who is Vishwanathan Anand? Like, who are these people, you know? Unknowns. It's nice that Bok is giving space to some anonymous club players to shine, you know? I think I saw this game actually. This is monumental. I think this game is present in perhaps the Fressinet course, maybe, and maybe it's not even this game. This is like the main idea. Yeah, this would be the main line. Yeah, this game, okay. Some people ask me in the comments, like, are you gonna show the games that you played in the tournament? I don't remember all the games, but one game was in this line. And here 94 is the move. Oh, no, sorry. No, it's not this line. Here, if rook e1 now, 95 is the move. But after h3, bishop h5, and rook e1 here, 95 is not the move because there are lines where g4 can be played. So here, long castle, yeah. And this was Anand's idea, to play this long castle against this main line of the Alapin. This is Anand's idea. So scratch what I said. I'm tired, sorry. Scratch what I said. This is the Anand's idea. All of this is still covering the course. Black gets the type of position we want, as there is an interesting dynamic imbalance. Bishop e4, e6. Black's best move, aiming to push white's bishop away with f5. Okay. b3, which is typical. f5. Bishop back to c2. And now g6. Wow. An excellent move, defending the f5 pawn once more, and thus preparing e6, e5. B takes c4, and now e5. Notices how he doesn't really care about the c4 pawn. This is interesting. And now d4 was played. After this move, white is actually already lost. What? The only move to maintain the balance was d3. Okay. So takes, and even here, like if they play d4 in this type of positions, what do you do? How do you react? He just takes it. And here, if they take back, what happened? I guess that after something like bishop g7, the pressure is just too much. Or perhaps even bishop takes f3, queen takes f3, knight takes d4. I don't know. But bishop g5 first, and now bishop g7. Sacrificing the exchange. Black gets tremendous compensation in return. So bishop takes, rook takes. Black is down the exchange, and a pawn if I'm not crazy. I'm crazy, but black is not down a pawn. But white does not have a good way to save their c3 pawn, which will give us a crushing initiative on the queen side. Oh, also c4 hanging. Oh yeah, we took a pawn they didn't take back and we were down a pawn, so now it's equal pawns, okay. So queen d3, queen f4, trying to play d takes c3, which attacks the queen. So basically the point of queen f4 is that now the rook is the first piece looking at this d file, so d takes c3 will just attack the queen directly. So queen d2, trying to trade, queen takes, trades, knight takes, d takes. Hitting the knight, and is a little bit of an issue. White's problems continue in the endgame. The c4 pawn is lost as well, and black's will slowly but surely march to victory on the queen side. So knight here, bishop takes, getting rid of this knight. Yeah, because if you think about it, this knight can just move somewhere, don't know where, and then the bishop is just stuck. So he just takes it. Knight b4 hits the bishop, defends it, knight takes, and now black is up 2 pawns. Okay, b5, trying to, well, supports the knight on c4, which is never a bad thing. Why not knight takes a2 as well? Very mysterious. But b5, knight a1, bishop attacks rook, rook moves, supports the knight, and notices how with these moves black is like mobilizing the 3 against 1. The king moves, knight jumps in, attacks the rook, rook's move, bishop f4, perhaps preventing rook to e5, which attacks b5, I don't know. Rook here, check, king moves, rook here, threatening rook a7 or something. Actually threatening a5, so he moves. Now rook here, king to b7, rook here, bishop d6, preventing rook e7, I guess, but I'm not sure. The bishop moves, the knight goes back. Threatening knight f4. Check. Attacks. Yeah, it's pretty brutal here. Takes it. b4. Defends. A beautiful victory by Anand, showcasing the potential of black's position in the sharp line in the Alapin. Yeah, this is huge. This is huge. Okay, let's keep going. I want to stay at around 2 hours. Yeah, 1 hour 32 minutes is fine. I'm gonna go for 2 hours here. What time is it? Almost 1 a.m. in the morning. Okay, fair enough. So, okay, this is some weird. I think I kind of remember this perhaps, but maybe not. Knight c6. All of this is still covering the course. Black already has a comfortable position as we have good pressure on white's d4 pawn. It is instructive how a strong grandmaster like Jordan outplays his opponent from here. Okay, so here I don't remember. I don't think this is the right move order, but I don't remember where we come from. But I remember there is a line like that. So rook c8, making sure that black can always recapture with the rook on c6. Otherwise, for example, after e6, black can get a backward c pawn. For example, b takes, b takes, okay. Castle, queen b6, knight c3. Perhaps a slight inaccuracy, as now the pressure on white's d4 pawn becomes annoying for the rest of the game. A better continuation was bishop takes, rook takes, knight b2 d2, aiming to recapture with the knight on f3 in the event of trade. But okay, e6. Okay. So e6 now. Bishop e3, knight e7. h3, bishop takes. Queen takes. The only reason you can't win d4 is because the knight's pinned. Bishop g7. The only move for black to maintain the balance. Castle is coming next. Knight f5 will not be a good idea due to g4. And white gets a strong initiative. Okay. Yeah, because for example, after knight f5, g4, knight takes, there even is pawn takes, and all of a sudden this d4 pawn is a stronghold, and f7 is under attack. It's not clear how you defend it. Bishop g7 would just lose to queen takes f7. So bishop g7 first, bishop takes, rook takes. Okay, interesting. So perhaps he really wants to go to f5, but I don't know. Also, b2 is hanging, but rook f2 c1 ignores that. I guess if you take, there are moves like rook b1 and then takes on b7. He just castles. Now knight a4 addresses the problem. Queen moves. Knight goes back. Sorry, queen goes back defending the knight. Rook f2 c8. I wonder why not knight c5. I guess after b3 you have to go back, as knight d7 runs into rook takes c1 check. And then you pick up d7, so okay, so queen there, rook here, g4, rook takes c1, rook takes c1, rook takes c1, bishop takes c1, knight c6, okay. Black has a clear advantage now. The d4 pawn is still an issue for white, and white knight on a4 is also feeling a bit uncomfortable. Bishop e3, bishop f8. Whoa. The bishop was just stuck staring at the e5 pawn on g7, so it's a good idea to bring it back to life on the f8, a3 diagonal. This is a very nice pattern, which I think is useful for many openings, but okay. So b3, queen b4, and also bishop to f8 controls c5 a little bit better. So queen to b4. Queen to b4 may have the idea of playing b5, and if knight c5, bishop takes c5, pawn takes c5, d4, and then queen takes c5 maybe. Queen d3, and now bishop e7. A good improving move, but Jordan misses an opportunity here. Much better was queen e1, queen f1, queen takes f1, king takes f1, bishop to b4, followed by b5, as king to b2 would run into bishop c3. Okay. Winning the d4 pawn, and king c5. King c5 will run into bishop takes c5. Oh, knight c5, okay, sorry. Why k c5? Isn't it an n? Oh, no. So he's writing k, but he's like n. Okay. So b5 as knight here will run into bishop here, and knight here will run into bishop takes c5, and white's e5 pawn would be hanging. Okay. Okay. Nice. These are all nice patterns that of course are nice. So knight c3, bishop back, perhaps going to b6, I don't know. King g2, bishop b6, yeah. Knight e2, king f8. So white has a weakness, but that's it. Another excellent move by Jordan, centralizing the king for the endgame. h4, king e8, h5, queen a3, attacking a2, knight back defense, a6 preventing knight b5, h takes, knight a4, attacking the bishop. Liam, who is Jordan's opponent, was under some pressure, but after this move his position is beyond repair. Better was queen d1, after which white has good chances to hold, as black also has to watch out for ideas like queen h1, h8, queen h1 to h8, okay. Bishop a5, knight a4, queen takes a2. Okay. Knight a4 though is not good. Bishop a7, attacking a2 again, so queen d2 defense. And now king d7. b5 is coming next, and white is simply losing a pawn. King f3, b5, knight c5 check, knight c3. We'll run into queen b4, okay. But wait, if knight c3, queen b4, knight to e2, this time you have queen takes, bishop takes, and then the pawn falls, okay? So knight c5, bishop takes, pawn takes, knight check. Jordan did not have any trouble finishing the game with the extra pawn. King f4, knight back, king here, king e7, preventing the entrance of the king. Bishop here, threatening bishop f6 perhaps, but of course e4. Queen e3, pinning, but knight takes. And it's GG, because after queen takes e5 there is knight e6 and everything's protected, and c5 also falls. An excellent game by Jordan, showing how one can outplay their opponent from the black side in this structure. Okay, I'll have to come back to this game because I didn't quite understand it well. It was very different from the previous structure I've seen, and I'm also quite tired. But there are still 20 minutes to go, and there are just 2 games left, so I think I'm just gonna watch them all, and that's it. Theo Bressi, Benjamin Bach, chess.com, title Tuesday, okay. So e4, c5, a3, g6, I've started this, believe it or not. h4, here the move is knight f6 if I'm not mistaken, and after e5, knight h5. But they play knight c3, okay, so knight c6, preventing e5. As I explained in the course, black is already significantly better here, as white h2, h4 push is not useful at all, and black can try to quickly gain the upper hand in the center with d75, if given the chance. It's actually more useful than you think to see these very much sidelines, because when they happen they're annoying. So bishop c4, now e6. The typical response to bishop c4 setups. The light square bishop is being blunted, and black can follow up with a quick d5 to gain more space in the center and to push it away. d3. Bishop g7, normal, bishop f4, d5, bishop b5, bishop d7, breaking the pin, neutralizing the pin on our knight on c6, as we do not want to allow white to give us double pawns. Queen d2, setting up bishop h6 stuff, but now a6. Asking white what they are going to do with their light square bishop, which they do not have a good answer to. Bishop takes. The alternative bishop a4 also gives black a big advantage, as after b5, as white light square bishop will be entombed after c4. Okay, so the idea is that bishop b3, for example, c4, pawn takes, I guess, and the bishop have to go to a2 and is dead. Okay, so bishop takes c6, bishop takes c6, attacking e4, I think. Now black has a clear advantage, as I add the bishop pair, and it is also not that easy to deal with the pressure on the e4 pawn. So e takes, knight takes. This is another important pattern, like how do you take back in this type of thing? Like, do you take with a pawn? My instinct would... Okay, no, my instinct is to take with a knight, but like, why not with a pawn? Knight takes, queen takes. Wow. I guess there are tactical reasons though here. Black already has a decisive advantage, as the pressure on both diagonal is just too much for white to deal with. So long castle, and here notice how instead of going pawn hunting, he just goes for the kill, leading to a deadly attack on the white king. The end of the game is imminent. Queen a5 to prevent checkmate. Queen takes, king here, b6. Ooh. Ooh. White is losing a full queen, so they resign. I hope this game gives you a good idea as to how you should play against the a3 system if white goes for an early h4 push. Well, that's quite huge. Okay, and now the last final game of these games. We have Juan Manuel Carrasco Martinez against Miguel Santo Ruiz. Linares 2021. Okay, historical tournament. Knight c3, we finally get to see the close Sicilians. Today I played 2 close Sicilians. That's crazy. This is a Grand Prix attack though. This is all standard theory, and I think the theory section ends here. All of this is still covered in the course. Black is already slightly for choice, as bishop b7 is coming next, and we will have nagging pressure on white center. However, this is perhaps the most important game, because Many people play the closed Sicilian online at around 2200 level, and in general this is the Grand Prix, so it's very important to see how to deal with it. Okay, so knight takes, c takes. Again, how do you take back, with a bishop or with a pawn? I think both are fine, but in this game c takes, and this is very forcing, so let's see how they deal with it. Because, for example, in this structure, they will play c3 at some point, and it's quite annoying to deal with it. So bishop b7, c3, here we go, and queen b6, look at this. Queen b6, not afraid of losing the bishop, because you will win material, yeah. Pawn takes, bishop takes, knight takes, queen takes, the bishop drops. King h1, because of that, you are also threatening d takes c3 with check. And now d takes c3 anyways, wow. D takes, I was expecting b takes though. B takes. Okay, but d takes, now knight f6, attacking the pawn. e5, hoping to push black's knight away, but here Miguel finds a series of powerful moves. Better would have been queen c2, after which black is still a bit better, but white's position is definitely playable. Okay, so queen c6 first, to threaten checkmate, very nice. Also, why not knight g4? This looks so powerful. I don't know. I guess queen e1 though. Yeah, queen e1 probably. Yeah. Okay, so queen c6, a strong intermezzo, as defending against checkmate on g2 is going to force white to make some awkward moves. Rook f3, okay. Now knight to g4, creating the threat of queen takes f3, followed by knight f2, forking the white king and queen. Okay, very nice. So queen e1 defends against that. d6 now. d6. Undermining white's e5 pawn, so the dark square bishop can come to life again. Interesting. But what about e takes? Well, again, I guess queen takes and the rook's hanging, rook g3, what to do? h5 perhaps. Yeah, probably just h5. Very nice. Rook g3, h5, here we go. h3. Hoping to push black's knight away, but black has other intentions. d takes e5, powerful move obviously. f takes e5. Black has a lot of ways to win after h takes g4, perhaps the simplest being h4. Okay, and if they move the rook, they're getting mated, unless they move it here to f3, but then h3, with a crushing attack again. Rook takes h3, queen takes g2 is checkmate. F takes e5, knight takes e5, now the knight's saved, and the knight takes d3 is a massive threat because the rook can't move. Now black is just a pawn up and still has a strong initiative, yeah. So bishop c2, rook d8, knight d3 I think is a threat. Knight d4, rook takes d4, of course, can you imagine? Can you imagine not getting this situation here? C takes d4, h4. Again, if the rook moves, they're getting mated. Black's threats just keep coming. Rook g5, knight f3, this is crazy move. d5. The knight cannot be recaptured as g takes f3. Runs into check, king moves, bishop takes d4, with mate to follow, as bishop e5 is coming next. Yeah, so bishop e5, if they take with the rook is mate on g2, and if they take with the queen is mate on h1. So that's pretty brutal. And if not that, probably bishop f2, bishop g3 or something. Okay, but this never happened, they played d5, counterattacking the queen. Queen takes d5, wow. Rook takes d5, knight takes, and now two things are hanging. Three things are hanging. Rook d2, trying to defend everything, but rook h5. At first glance, this might not look so bad for white, as we are in an endgame and white has the extra exchange, albeit for 2 points. However, white's pieces are still tied up. So rook h5. Black's initiative rages on, as now the rook comes in to do some damage. Bishop d1 attacks the rook. rook to f5, trying to go rook f1. King g1 defends that, and now bishop takes g2. Another nice find, winning a pawn and destroying white's position even further. Now there is the threat of rook f1, rook h1 mate if I'm not crazy, which I could be. Bishop e2 defends against that. The point is that rook takes g2 would run into bishop d4, king h2, knight takes, king takes rook f2, and black will win more material in the next few moves. Okay. Yeah, the only move is king h1. Okay, so king g1, rook d2, king h1, rook f1. Okay, that's crazy. So bishop e2. Now bishop back to b7. a4, b4, not allowing the activation of the a1 rook. a5, knight c2. What do you mean knight c2? What do you mean knight c2? This is crazy. Rook a4. Because knight c2 attacks the rook. Like, what happened on rook takes? Bishop check. Oh, and the king's getting mated. Okay, I'm too tired for this. Yeah, I'm too tired for this. But okay, rook a4. Now bishop c6. A nice game by black, beautifully dismantling the Grand Prix attack. So again, if they take here, they're getting mated, or they lose the rook, which would just be giving back the exchange, but they're probably getting mated. If they instead play something like rook back to a2, then there is b3, and the rook's lost again. Beautiful. Okay, let's view this and let's finish the chapter. Here we go. Congratulations. Hard work pays off. You finish learning the chapter. Yeah, hard work pays off for sure. Okay, so guys, hopefully you enjoyed this video. It was a little bit unusual from usual, because it's just basically me going through the annotated games of a course. And but yeah, we learned so many patterns. Ideally, I would have to go through those games again and again and again, which I will eventually do after I finish memorizing all of the 3 courses. And yeah, there is so much to learn. So having said that, guys, thank you so much for watching. Let me grab these. Okay, thank you so much for watching. Enjoy your chess.